Today, we are using Houdini's procedural feature for camera animation. First, I will show you some redshift optimization tricks to lay out the set, and we'll see how we can use Chops to make handheld camera following or tracking our hero. Let's dive in. Alright, this is where we left, and we just finished with the cape, so I'm gonna turn it off to optimize the display and have Houdini run faster. Now, I imported a bunch of objects I bought on CG Trader, I think, and the first thing I do, first is to convert that into a proxy. So I assign some materials, do my transform to adapt the scale and everything, and once I'm happy with shaders and stuff, well, I'm just dropping a redshift proxy output. And what this allows me is to export a RS object, and this will help to actually speed up renders. So let's render to disk. So what's great about this format is that you can import this model with all the materials to any other program that supports Redshift. So I'm gonna load this proxy, and to actually display it, you would need to drop another node that's called Redshift proxy. So this would be to load the proxy that is referenced in here, the proxy file name. And from there, you can basically change the display mode to anything. You can use a mesh, but use the display percentage, points. So it gets very useful on heavy scenes. So if you're making a forest with some very high-res trees, you would need to turn them first into proxy to speed up and optimize renders. Now, doing this operation as much as needed for all my elements, and I'll just see you in a bit. So just finished with the street light, and that's awesome. Now, in terms of material, by default they are using the one that is packed with the RS geometry, but you can use the material you have in your scene if you turn this to from scene materials. Okay, so this should preserve the connection with my shaders. So from there, we are ready to start dressing. So doing a bit of cleaning, organizing a bit this graph. So that would be our library of 3D models. And we'll just copy paste the transform node into another context with all the containers. Okay, so I'm just gonna try to fit it with the collider that we created. So I guess the trick here is just to make sure that the hands and feet are not penetrating with our mesh. So I think that could be alright. Actually gonna reduce that a little bit. Yeah, pretty happy with that. And yeah, we could drop a grid for ground. So we'll see how we can turn that into some proper asphalt at some point. And let's move these. So just dressing something real quick so that we have something to frame inside our camera. Because, well, just a character in the ground might not be enough. Let's add maybe some light street. I'm gonna move these over there, and later we will cast some lights from those. Create a pretty cool lighting out of it. Okay, so something like that. And actually, I kind of think they might be a bit too big. Let's say I want to reduce the size, I would need to update the proxy. So let's reduce the size of this little guy, and let's try to render to disk. So it wouldn't work because Redshift is warning us that we need to disable the proxy before actually being able to render to disk again. Now it's properly saved, and we just need to re-enable it. So if I display the proxy, it's all good. Just need to reload the proxy, so just by disabling, re-enabling, it's all good. Alright, so from there we are ready to start working with cameras. So if you have never worked with Houdini's camera before, I'm gonna do a quick introduction. So basically you're using this little lock so that you lock the camera to your view, otherwise you're not moving the camera. And there are multiple ways to move camera. So you have these handles that helps a lot actually to frame things very precisely. And I usually like to use them quite a lot. Alternatively, you can middle click to any parameters and do your settings. So once you are happy with your frame, you can just alt click to, let's say frame 45. Let's alt click here to assign some keyframe. Move, let's say, frame 89, move the camera to another location, and let's alt click again, and it's gonna create this interpolation. So pretty basic animation actually. And inside the animation editor, you can see your curves and edit them. So let's say you don't want to have those fade in, fade out. You could also play with straight to have something constant. And that's pretty much it. So I like to use keyframe on top of procedural animation. So we'll see how we can procedurally like follow the characters, aim at it. So I'm gonna rename this camera keyframe test, and we're gonna create another setup that will allow us to follow the character. So I'm gonna call this cam follow. And from there, it's time to talk about parenting. So I'm not talking about having kids. I'm just talking about linking cameras transform to something else. So that was the cameras that we just keyframe. If we try to link or cam follow, it's basically gonna copy the transform. One thing though is that we can keep the initial position and try to link it. And from there, it's conserving the offset and trying to follow the camera that we animated. Now, I know what you're gonna tell me. Just unplug that stuff and plug it on the characters and it will follow. Well, let's try. And it doesn't. It actually doesn't, because we don't have any keyframe actually. It's like procedural mocap stuff. We don't have any actual keyframe on that stuff. So we're gonna need to extract some transform to apply on our camera. So we're gonna create a new geometry that we'll call agent transformation. And let's object merge the output of our agent animation. Okay. So actually let's hide everything else. So that was our beautiful character, and we'll just isolate one point. So I actually want to extract only one point. I don't need to keep everything. So let's say 322 seems to be a cool one. That would be on the head. And as you can see, or maybe not, because one point is pretty hard to locate. So we got this point moving, and we want to extract the transform of this specific point. To do so, let's just add a null that we'll call agent animation. And we need one frame that's like frozen. So we'll use a time blend to make the first frame static. So let's set that to frame 1. If we check out this time blend, it's not moving. Great. So this one's gonna be agent static. Okay. So from there, let's just see what we got. Let's just use an extract geo, and we'll basically call these two inputs. So the first one would be agent static, and then agent animation for the destination geometry. So we don't necessarily need to extract rotation, so let's just uncheck that. I'm gonna call that extract animation. Okay, I'm gonna create a null, and that's gonna be the output animation. Okay, so from there, I also wanna create a null that's gonna be the parent of the cam follow. This way, if we move this null, it's gonna move the camera as well. Let's try that. So if I try to move this null, we are moving the camera. Great. So we want to assign the extract animation to this null. To do so, we're going to use the chop network, and we'll create a backdrop actually to make this clean, and we'll call that follow cam shot 1. Okay, so let's dive inside the shop network that we'll call shot 1 or follow. And in there, we're gonna need to import the transform, the extract transform that we created. So let's just pick output anim. And in here, you specify whether we want position, rotation, things like that. So we just need the position in that case. And we're gonna export those transform. And we're gonna export that onto that was the null that was parented, and I actually forgot to name it, so that's gonna be parent cam follow. So we wanna export the transform on that null. And what do we wanna transfer? We want to translate X, translate Y, translate Z, and let's paste that here. And let's also click here to export that. And as soon as you click on that, it's gonna create a connection. It's gonna turn yellow. And as you can see, say overridden by, well, this shop network. So from there, we see that the camera and the null is properly following our character. So that's great. From there, we can offset the camera independently from the null. And it's still gonna follow. So I'm gonna do some adjustments. Let's use the handles. And might probably change the focal length. Yeah, it's working. So it's looking pretty sweet already, but it doesn't feel too natural because, well, the characters stay in the middle of the frame, so we could use some jiggle actually. From there, we're gonna head into the motion effects view, which is the graph of the shop network. And as you can see, well, probably that if you're not too familiar with animation and graphs and stuff like that, maybe it doesn't ring any bell, but you can pretty much guess what can happen out of these curves. So I'm gonna try something like that. That might be a bit too much, but oh well, okay, yeah. So the shake is way too high, so I'm gonna actually remove some flecks and could also increase the stiffness, that it feels more stiff. And well, now we could also increase the damping, which will like attenuate over time. So let's try that. That's pretty cool. Gonna make me dizzy by the end, but yeah, you get the idea. Probably will reduce that or smooth that. So first I want to show you also the lag node, which is very useful to introduce some delay. So you can delay in X or in Y. So if I delay too much, well, character is going to be out of the frame. So let's reduce that. So maybe something like that. So it's trying to chase the character, but well, it end up catching up, but yeah, let's not overdo it. So yeah, that can be an interesting feature to play with. Yeah, why not? So one more thing, as I talk about, we could smooth the animation using a filter. So filter will use a Gaussian blur kind of thing on the curve. So as you can see, it's making the curves much more round, and that should help smooth the animation really and get more like a Steadicam kind of vibe. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that. From there we could also add some keyframe animation to break up a bit this procedural animation. And so we could adjust the height of this camera, I think. Let's add a key here. So Alt click, and I'll click in here with this height. Yeah, let's not forget to set the key. And yeah, from there we probably want to play with the rotation too. So probably we could aim the camera toward the ground a bit more from here. And yeah, let's move that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Maybe it could go up again. Well, anyway, I will cut, I think before, but well, just for fun. Let's do that. Right. Okay. From there, I'm gonna reduce a bit the lag. Actually, yeah, that's pretty fun. Okay, so we're gonna move to another kind of setup, which is a look at kind of constraint. So we'll create a new camera that we'll call look at. I'm gonna parent it. We'll call that parent shot 2, and let's create a network box, and that would be the look at shot 2. So from there, we're gonna set this up in another way. So we got these handles, and basically we want the aim of that camera to follow the character. Because so far, well, you would need to drop a key, like let's say move that here, drop a key, and it would follow. So that's not ideal. So let's use a constraint to automate that. So we'll use a look at constraint, and let's just pick this null, which corresponds to the output anim. And it's creating this chop network setup. So I'm just gonna get rid of this one. It's actually not helping. But yeah, as you can see, it's following the guy. Well, more precisely, it's following the null, which happens to be around the feet. So it's like a Tarantino shot. Anyway, let's move the null of our camera so that find a more interesting place. And also we could move this null. So the problem is that it was also linked to the cam follow, but well, that's why I actually like to create multiple null for every different constraint. So that would be for the look at. So in that case, I'm going to replace inside the shop network the output anim to output anim look at. Okay. In that case, we can also add the lag node, jiggle, and whatever you feel like you would need. Okay, so I want to actually move this null. I'm gonna put it here, and let's increase the translate Y so that it's a bit higher. Now it's like aiming around the waist, so I think it's not too bad. Actually, I'm gonna move the camera to another location, like maybe around here. And I'm probably gonna need to change the focal of that camera too. Put it closer to the ground, and yeah, I think definitely let's play with the focal length. So in view, let's set that to, let's say 30. I'm gonna put it way closer than something like that. Yeah, I kind of like the composition. And actually I'm gonna move a bit the containers that are on the right or on the left, I don't know. Yeah, those guys. So actually let's parent that one to the pile. So if I move the pile, I'm moving the rest. And just moving that here to create some more depth, because I kind of like when there is like multiple layer of depth. If everything is on one plane, it's not necessarily interesting. I kind of like that there is the street light that brings some perspective. And yeah, basically from here, you would also want to make sure that the camera is not more than 180 degrees of difference with the previous camera, just because aesthetically it's not very cinematic. So I think that could pass. I mean, I'm not sure how it's gonna connect with the previous camera, but we'll try that. I'm animating the focal length just so that we got the guy with like 88 millimeter, and you can shift click, by the way, on the keyframe to move them. So that can be pretty useful to mock up some cool animation, like moving the keyframe just at the impact could give a bit of superhero kind of shot. Yeah, pretty happy with that. So that's pretty much it in terms of setup and camera, I think. There's one final trick that I like to do, is to use one camera to basically mix other cameras. I'm not sure if I'm clear, but I'm gonna show you that in a bit. So it's basically creating a camera that will get the position of whatever you import inside this shot network. So in that case, I'm gonna import the camera of the shot 1, shot 2. So cam follow and cam look at. In that case, I want to make sure I'm getting the rotation. Yep, let's get the second one. And basically I wanna mix the position of those two just to do some editing kind of thing. The only problem is that it wouldn't take into account the focal length, but well, that can be pretty useful if you don't want to do some editing and stuff. Well, why not? It's good for Playblast. So I'm gonna export this on the cam mixer, and I'm exporting the rotation and translation. So let's export that. Poof. And if I go inside the cam mixer, well, now we have this constraint blend that basically allow me to switch from one camera to another. So let's say from here, I want to switch to the camera number 2. So I'm gonna create another keyframe here and blend to 1, and poof, here we go. We have a jump cut kind of thing. So that's pretty convenient just to check out the overall look of the sequence. That's a shame that in that case the focal length isn't taken in account. So if you have any ideas how to bring that into the setup, well, I'm interested to know, so let me know in the comments what you think. There are probably some smarter ways to mix cameras and stuff. Probably I'll write a tool at some point. But yeah, that's what we get. And anyway, by the end you would render those cameras separately. So we'll see that in the next video, how we can do some lighting using the takes. So I'm just adding a filter to smooth a bit the camera move. All right. So that's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. We could complete the set and do some more dressing, of course. Right now it's pretty empty, so you would duplicate those containers and move that around, I guess. So we could have some on the left side, maybe to bring some lines converging toward the character. That could be interesting. So maybe something like that and push it. Yeah. So that would be one way to do it. I think in other videos and tutorials at some point I will talk about Solaris and how we can use this to lay out some cool scenes and shots. But that's pretty much it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope this was useful. In the next part we'll be sharing some shading and lighting tricks using redshift. Once again, thank you to my patrons. Definitely check out my page if you are interested in an early access, CG tutorials and some more perks. Otherwise, next video will be released here in 2 weeks, so stay tuned and I'll see you guys next time.